I've actually started and stopped this video a few times because when something like this happens and it's someone that you actually did look up to or whose work had an impact on your life, there's not really words exactly for events like that, you know, where someone passes on. And Val Kilmer was someone like that for me, and he did pass on. He died at the age of 65 to pneumonia, and he had suffered from a lot of health issues in recent years. He was very famous for a lot of different roles. So he was very famous for playing characters like Iceman in Top Gun, and obviously he played a lot of different roles as well. I actually had pulled up even a whole list of some of his most famous movies because I haven't seen all of them. But he was also famous for roles in movies like The Saint and Tombstone and also Heat. I mean, the guy definitely got around when it came to filmmaking. He was in a lot. For example, I didn't know he was in the Planes movie from 2013. Never saw that even from Disney. Had no idea that he was in that. So, regardless, my point is, he's been in a lot. For me, though, my biggest focus for this video is going to be talking about my experience with this actor from Batman Forever. This is a movie that is often panned. It's often mocked. If you say you like it, there's a lot of criticism of it. It's not as much so as Batman and Robin, which is a movie I didn't really care for as much as a follow-up in a lot of ways. But in general, I really liked Batman Forever a lot. And Val Kilmer's acting in it and the character that he played is something that really affected me growing up that I'd like to just take a couple of minutes to talk about. Now, in a video where someone passed away, I am very hesitant to ever try to sell you anything or shill anything, or you know what I mean, like anything like that. So if you're interested in supporting our channel, the normal ways will be down in the description and things like that. But I did want to ask you a question today, which is just genuinely, is there a role that Val played, that, you know, Val Kilmer played, that affected your life or that you loved, or something that stood out to you? Because he's a person who did really, as he said, live a magical life where he got to tell these different stories and enter into these worlds where storytelling on the screen could affect so many people. You know, I think in general, it's not something that people really even understand fully when they're alive. And that's one thing I wanted to take a look at today, because, for example, with the Batman franchise, before I even talk about my experience with it, because I can only speak from my end, this is a franchise that did inspire me, the classic Batman anthology growing up. And yet I saw when I was researching, why did he not come back for Batman and Robin after Batman Forever? Because at the time Batman Forever came out, it wasn't exactly panned or anything. I mean, it was compared to the previous two films, you know, the previous two, I should say, modern era films, because there were other depictions of Batman before that. Adam West, for example, very famous. But, you know, I didn't know this. It was always really debated why he didn't come back. There were all these different people talking about it over the years. For example, I know Schumacher kind of had thrown his weight in on it, and the story had changed over and over. I was reading a thing from CBR, actually, who did a good job chronicling it, and they said that it changed over and over. In 1996, Schumacher had said that Kilmer sort of quit and was sort of fired, but because of clashes with the production team during Batman Forever, where he was apparently not that happy. But then there was another different interview with Schumacher later on, where he said that he thought that Batman Forever went to Kilmer's head. And then there was also an interview with Kilmer where he had said essentially that there were scheduling conflicts, but then there was also a final interview with Kilmer where he talked a little bit about it, which was very sad to me. It was in 2020, so this was only 5 years ago, where he said that he had essentially lost interest in playing Batman after Warren Buffett and his grandkids came to visit the Batman Forever set, but they were far more interested in checking out the mask and Batmobile than in even meeting him, you know, the actor who was actually playing the role. And Kilmer said that he realized after this, experience with Warren Buffett and these kids that his performance just didn't matter to people because it wasn't about Batman. There is no Batman. And I think what he kind of meant here, not to speak for the dead, but essentially was the idea that it's like they cared more about the fictional idea of the character and not the human elements behind it. And it seems like that really kind of was like a dagger to him in a way. And it is kind of sad when you look at roles like this. You look at roles like Batman, Spider-Man, stuff like that. There are a lot of, not that you can't love the character, but if you focus only on the character and you miss the human behind it, bringing it to life, or you focus only on the character's, what would you say, like costume, things like that, and you miss the person bringing it to life, I do think you're missing a huge part of that character. But it makes me really sad to see, that he felt his performance didn't matter there to people. Because for me, growing up, Batman Forever was something that was on in my home ad nauseum. I was a kid in the 90s, so I was born in 94, and growing up, obviously, into the early 2000s, my family didn't have a lot of money. Like, we didn't have money for cable TV. We didn't have money for fast internet. We didn't have money for stuff like that. Now, this isn't like a please feel bad for me because Val Kilmer died thing, but I'm just kind of setting the stage here to tell you why Batman Forever affected me a lot. Because what we did have was just broadcast television, the standard channels that you don't have to pay for in the United States, and two movies that played over and over again, especially at night, were Batman 1989 and Batman Forever. They played several times throughout my childhood. I have no idea why it was so easy for these two films to air. I believe it was almost always on what was at the time the WB channel, but not things like Returns or Batman and Robin, which were also out there. So I don't know why movie 1 and 3 played, but not 2 and 4. But Batman Forever was something that was always kind of on. And it's a movie that I recorded, I remember, on VHS. Don't tell anybody, you weren't supposed to do this at the time. It was considered bad. But I remember recording the movie on VHS and replaying it over and over again because we couldn't really afford to buy movies at the time either. And I remember just how magical the world was to me. Even something I think I'll show throughout this video in case, you're like, where'd this footage come from? I didn't really have time to get it working, but there were so many cutscenes of different things on YouTube and all these different places where people, have shown off, hey, look, like even Val Kilmer's Batman suits have been modded into Batman Arkham Knight, the game. So that's something where, like, I didn't want to show anyone's gameplay footage or anything like that, but there will probably be a few cutscenes, things like that do pop up here and there, because this is, I think, a character where he might have felt like it didn't matter, to people after that experience, but there was a whole generation of kids like me where this was our Batman. In fact, I didn't remember this when I made the video about Michael Keaton, but thinking back, I'm pretty sure I saw Forever before I ever saw Batman 1989 and Returns, because Forever was played most commonly on TV as a rerun. And seeing this world where Kilmer's Batman was, with Tommy Lee Jones's eccentric, weird Two-Face and the Jim Carrey Riddler, which often got derided over the years as being too much like the Joker. I remember when growing up, these movies, like 89 and Forever, inspiring me to want to be a better person, inspiring me to want to be heroic. It's something, I'm not even saying I've lived up to that. Like, I'm just a normal person. But the point is, these movies made me want to be a better person, as a kid. They gave me something to look up to. I was talking to my wife Jill about this, and Forever was actually kind of like a gateway drug for me into Batman in a lot of ways. And so, remember, I'm now 30. So I'm not young by the internet standards, but I'm not really old either. And so growing up, we didn't have the Arkham series. You know, we didn't have that until I was older. Growing up, we didn't have that many solid, like, really well-known superhero video games. There was obviously shows and stuff too. Like Kevin Conroy's Batman was another one that was like really important in my life. But some of those big staples were things like Kilmer's Batman, Conroy's Batman, Keaton's Batman. You're hearing a lot of Batman. The Brandon Routh Superman, Tom Welling's Clark Kent into Superman, essentially. You know, things like the Spider-Man PS1 game, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, right? The X-Men, the Fox X-Men. These were things that stood out to me. They stuck with me. And they made me want to grow up. And I would always think to myself, I want to be like that. You know? I want to be the good guy. I want to make people's lives better in some way. That's the kind of impact Kilmer had. You know, there's a lot of specifics you can look at too. This isn't a review of Batman Forever, even though it's my biggest experience with him as an actor. Maybe a review of this movie would be fun to do, although it would probably make me cry now in the future. But, you know, I always remember thinking the costumes were magical and the gadgets were so fun, from just the things Batman would do all the way down to like the Riddler's weird, crazy, wonky gadgets. The movie in general, I thought Val Kilmer did a good job of portraying both Batman and Bruce Wayne, and kind of bringing like a level of sophistication to the Bruce Wayne role that I don't know if really even Michael Keaton captured. You know, Michael Keaton was I love him. I love his performances. But he was kind of like a squirrely little guy as Bruce Wayne. And that was kind of his cover, you know, in a lot of ways. He's kind of a nerd behind the scenes. And I don't really think that at the time his Bruce Wayne was like a super suave, sophisticated type of Bruce Wayne. And Kilmer actually did bring that energy and that portrayal of Bruce to screen in a way I thought was very, very interesting, standing out across from other human people. You know, even like Nicole Kidman, you know, playing Dr. Chase Meridian. Val Kilmer brought this human energy, this suave and sophisticated energy, but also a troubled one to the character. And it makes me sad to hear some of these post-mortem things that came out, you know, like that he felt isolated as this character, or he felt like it didn't matter, like it wasn't about him being a human, because that human portraying that character is one of the reasons why I think it mattered so much to me. If it was portrayed by someone who was just a garbage actor, I don't think I would have cared nearly as much. I don't think the movie would have stood out to me or affected me in my life nearly as much that I would have gone on to have a Batman birthday party at, you know, like 8 years old, stuff like that. That's not to say that Kilmer's life only mattered for Batman in any way. But to me, as cheesy as this might be, and as much as this might sound like a movie reviewer's headline, to me, Val Kilmer will be Batman forever in a lot of ways. Because growing up, that was one of my primary versions of the character. And I always thought people were too hard on this version of the character. I understand it with Batman and Robin where it went full wonky, but I've even read before that there was a Schumacher cut out there of this movie that was more serious and darker and things like that. I remember Kevin Smith said that he had a copy of it and saw it, so unless he's just lying through his teeth, that probably is out there. I don't really have a huge love of Kevin Smith after the way he talked about and did things like He-Man, but like that's something that's interesting to me. And even though it makes me sad that Val Kilmer wouldn't see this now, I do hope at some point they release that cut, that maybe WB or somebody puts that together and releases that, because it sounds to me like that version of the movie might have been better received by people. I love the one we got, but we're missing a key part of history out there with Val Kilmer and his acting career and Batman and all this stuff that is just lost out there, I guess, because studios don't want it out there. They just don't want to take the time to re-release it. Why ever that is, I don't know. But in general, that does make me sad because, you know, I wonder if they had been willing to do that. And this is something you could say for WB or any studio on a lot of stuff. And if that had come out, I do wonder if it would be something where people would have been kinder to him and his Batman and things like that. Because by all accounts, he was a good man. I don't know as much about his personal life as other people that I've talked about on the channel who did pass away, you know, like obviously James Earl Jones, some people like that. I was more in tune with them behind the scenes. But for Val Kilmer, like, by all accounts, he was a good man. He struggled with all of these health problems, struggled with cancer, had difficulties being understanded, and had difficulties with being in public due to going through treatments for that. Something, again, that, you know, like we saw with even someone like Chadwick Boseman. And it's truly tragic to lose someone like Val. I want to say so young, but then you have other guys like Paul Walker, Chadwick Boseman, and, you know, ad nauseum who have inspired me in my life who died even younger. But 65 is not that old in the modern era. So for him to pass away to pneumonia, it's truly tragic. I was inspired by him growing up. He's someone who does matter to me. His performance did matter. Batman Forever was a cultural phenomenon, actually, in the 90s and early 2000s. People don't remember that now, but, like, it really did matter to people. And it makes me sad that the message that he got from a lot of people and from these executives and studio people and rich people who just wanted to be around the movie because it was Batman was kind of like an FU. Because to me, the message I got from Val Kilmer was, you can be a better person. Your trauma doesn't have to define you. You can go on to matter, and you can go on to be more than the sum of your parts. So that's just kind of my experience with the movie, with him as an actor. Just in general, it makes me very sad. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts down below, and I'd be interested to hear what movie or movies or roles stood out to you. So, hope you have a fantastic day, and as always, everyone, stay shway.